Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 7 of What If Naruto Became a Green Lantern. If you guys enjoyed this what if, and want to see part 8 of it, comment down below and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. Check out my new videos of My Hero Academia what ifs in my second channel, and give it some love as well. Link is in the description. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Antimatter Universe, Court, Fear Lodge Chamber. Would you mind repeating what you told me? Asked Sinestro as he and Lissa Drac walked through the chamber. Contained inside were almost egg-like cells, just large enough to be able to hold one being at a time. It was the last test of any recruit who was chosen by the ring of the Sinestro Corps. As it happened, their latest had passed the initial training phase with relative ease. This recruit that they picked up from Ajnin had finished training early on, with him not only defeating Roma 2, but Arkillo as well, with Sinestro himself having to stop before he killed them. No small feat to be sure. But the real indicator was from what Lissa had told him, that he asked repeated. As per usual, after he had completed martial training, we put him into one of the fear lodges, forcing him to overcome his greatest fear, or die in the cell. She explained. Remarkably, he managed to conquer it in just 2 days. Most impressive, said Sinestro. But then explained why he went back inside. He said he was fascinated by the experience. However, since the lodge's function was done, it would not perform the same way again. Now he just sits examining it. Lissa explained as they approached the person in question. They saw him sitting cross-legged in front of the fear lodge that he had used. He also seemed to be using his ring to take notes on the device. And the life signs that it detected, have they been confirmed? He asked. Yes. But when I approached him about it, he said he would only speak to you about it, Sinestro, said Lissa. Sinestro then walked up to the man whose back was to him. The being that the ring had chosen from the planet Ajnin. Orochimaru, Sinestro called. The man with long black hair turned to him, being called. He was still in the uniform of the Sinestro Corps that he acquired when the ring chose him. The construct he was using, which appeared to be a notebook of some kind, disappeared as he stood up to address the new leader. Sinestro, how may I be of service? Said Orochimaru, bowing to him. Their Ajnin recruit was a quick study on how the Corps functioned, at least in part. Sinestro himself decided to be cautious of him. For a while he appeared to follow the chain of command. One look in this man's gold-slitted snake-like eyes told him another story altogether. Good morning, Orochimaru, he greeted politely. I understand you have become fascinated with our fear lodges. Indeed. This technology is unlike anything I have ever seen before, Orochimaru said. There is much that we have to show then, responded Sinestro. However, there is something of some concern. Oh? What would that be? Orochimaru asked. It was then that Lissa moved next to her leader as she portrayed a medical diagram of a humanoid body using her ring. Orochimaru knew instinctively that it was his body that the readout showed. This is the medical readout that I received from the Fear Lodge while you were inside of it, she explained. From what I have seen, 2 things are wrong. First, while gradual, your body seems to be degrading at the cellular level. And the second? He asked. Lissa then made a motion with her hand that the construct readout became more elaborate and showed the physical resemblance of the body. Sure enough, the body readout while in yellow did not match Orochimaru's physical appearance, but rather the appearance of the white Setsu he inhabited. As you can see, the resemblance of the body doesn't match, said Sinestro in Lissa's place. Would you mind explaining these things? Ah, I see some explanation is required, said Orochimaru. I can answer the reason for both rather easily, but it will take some time. We have nothing pressing at the moment, said Sinestro, crossing his arms. Lissa had opened her book of parallax, as if ready to record this explanation. Orochimaru bowed in respect and continued on. As you are no doubt aware by now, I am something of a scientist on my world. During my time I wanted to learn and discover as many of my world's jutsu as I could. But naturally this would take a long time. Longer than a normal person on my world's lifespan. So I created the living corpse reincarnation ritual. This jutsu allows me to transfer my true form into one host body after another. Thus prolonging your own life as it were, said Lissa. Correct. Now I can only perform it every 3 years. That is the reason, as you my dear have just deduced, is the body's deterioration. It will soon reject me since I am in it unnaturally. As for my appearance, well, I can change the outward appearance to what my form was before I augmented my true form. For cosmetic purposes, he said with a smirk on his face. A handy technique and one that shows your resourcefulness, complimented Sinestro. However, you can see the issue when it comes to my fellow members. Yes, I have. Rest assured, Sinestro, I have no intention of body snatching any of my new comrades in arms. I simply need to find myself a proper container for myself. That has been a goal of mine for years, said Orochimaru. his tone suggesting his determination in such a goal. Sinestro and Lissa both looked at each other and nodded. Well then you might be in luck. We have a way to provide you with what you need, said Sinestro. When he heard this, Orochimaru's eyes widened in excitement. A guardian has already seen your records and has already come to a solution to your problem, Sinestro said, noticing his new prospect's keen excitement. If you will follow me. They soon both flew out of the chamber, leaving Lissa to her thought as she turned back to the fear lodges. Let's hope this doesn't destroy us, she thought to herself. Top floor. Guardian chamber. Orochimaru and Sinestro flew into the large hallway, landing just in front of the large door that had the core symbol on it. I should tell you now, Sinestro said, getting the Ajnian's focus back on him as Orochimaru admired the structure of the building. Normally our guardian doesn't take visitors very often. Even I only see her when she commands it. Should I appear honored then? Orochimaru questioned, hearing the slight bitter tone from Sinestro's voice. That would be prudent, he said. From there the doors opened, and they stepped inside. Sinestro then noticed that Orochimaru had again a strange and, dare he say, scary look of fascination on his face. Almost as if, as Hal liked to say back when he was a Green Lantern, a kid in a candy store. Inside the inner chamber was a myriad of scientific equipment years ahead of anything that Orochimaru had seen on his home planet. It didn't take him long to realize that this was a scientist's lab. One that made his look like it was in the Dark Ages. Impressive, he said in awe. It is adequate. Still not at the standard that I am used to, said a droll female voice. Orochimaru and Sinestro both looked up to see the source of that voice floating down before them. From the database that the ring provided, Orochimaru knew that this small blue bald woman was Maltusian, the same race as the Guardians that formed the Green Lantern Corps. However, there were differences. For one thing, instead of the usual red cloak they adorned, she wore a yellow cloak with the Sinestro Corps symbol on the center, rather than the Green Lantern symbol. Another was the burn-like scar across the left side of her face. What made Orochimaru nervous, though, was the cold eyes she had. The look that seemed to scream power and a certain breed of malice in them would have made the most hardened shinobi of his world quiver in fear. I take it this is the Ajnian Sinestro? She questioned as she floated to look at both of them eye to eye. Yes, he is, he said. Allow me to introduce you, Orochimaru, to the guardian of the Sinestro Corps. Scar herself. I am honored to meet you, said Orochimaru, bowing before her. Well, at least you have better manners than some others of our order, said Scar. Orochimaru didn't have to look up to know she was glaring at the supposed leader of the Corps that was named after him. Nor could he ignore the distaste in Sinestro's voice when he introduced her to him. You two can raise your heads now that the pleasantries are over. If you will both follow me, said Scar as she floated to the center of the room with Orochimaru and Sinestro in tow. Sinestro has informed me about you, Orochimaru. He believes that you hold value to the Corps. Normally I am skeptical when he gives such praise to a raw recruit, especially one from a world that even I, up until just weeks ago, didn't know about, she said with a frown as they walked behind her hovering form. However, I cannot say that we are not in dire need of such, given how limited we are compared with the Green Lantern Corps, she continued, now turning to Sinestro. Orochimaru could tell that Sinestro was biting his tongue. As such like him, I have seen the data from your body scans, and as I am sure that he told you, I have come with a solution to your problem. If you will follow me, she said, gesturing them to follow her to the center of the room. There in the center were more computer panels. These, however, surrounded a large lab tank. Inside it was a human silhouette. Only this silhouette was completely white, not so much different than the white Zetsus that Orochimaru encountered during the 4th Great Ninja War. As they stopped in front of it, Orochimaru could see that besides its was the form of a human male in perfect shape. Hands, feet and everything else was there and appeared normal. What set it apart was the fact that it was bald and seemed more like a corpse. I am to assume that this is the solution that Sinestro mentioned, madam, said Orochimaru. Indeed, Scar confirmed. Thanks to some new allies I have managed to procure this chamber. The body you see is an artificial host body, as I would call it. It was grown from simple microbe and has grown into a fully formed male body. She then turned to look at Orochimaru directly. This body has been designed to stop aging when it reached its fully mature state. In human Ajnian standards of age, it is between late 20s to early 30s. Once it reached maturity, the body has since stopped aging. This artificial body will never age and has advanced regenerative abilities. So, while this body is not immortal, it will take extreme damage before termination. Orochimaru listened to what the Guardian said while looking at the living corpse in front of him with delight in his eyes. At last, a suitable vessel for my soul to inhabit. And though not immortal, it will be eternally young and be very durable. And even better, this woman has done most of the work modifying the body to suit my abilities in battle. Oh yes, it will more than suffice, he thought to himself, looking it over. Will this be satisfactory then? She asked, although she already knew what the answer will be. Is it ready then for me to enter it? Orochimaru questioned in answer. Of course it is, said Scar with arrogance. The only question then is how long your jutsu will take, and how long you will take to adapt and allocate with it. Though, normally it takes me only 3 days for me to adjust to my new clothes, so to speak, said Orochimaru with a smile. However, since this body has no soul, it will take me half the time needed. I'd say a day and a half at most. Excellent, said Sinestro, breaking his silence. So if that is all, I must take my leave. There are other matters I must attend to. I shall return in that time you have said it will take for you to get used to your new body. He then turned to Scar and gave a light bow to her. Guardian, he said. She nodded as if she had given him permission to leave. Sinestro started to fly out but hovered for a moment. When you are done, you will be officially recognized as one of us. Welcome, Orochimaru, he said before flying out the door, closing it behind him. You should leave as well, madam. Normally, when I reveal my true form, to inhabit a body it can be quite gruesome, said Orochimaru. I have seen worse, said Scar as she pressed the button to release the body from the tank. In truth, since finding out about this race, she had been curious about this race's abilities, and the scientist in her could not afford to leave such a thing unchecked. Orochimaru shrugged as he stood in front of his new body as it knelt before him, as if in preparation to be sacrificed. He smiled at the irony as the familiar purple aura surrounded him. It was then that Scar witnessed Orochimaru abandoning his current form into the white snake and saw it approach and enter its new host. Watching the whole process made her feel something that she had not felt for what seemed to be an eternity. Fascination. OA, Guardian Chambers of Ganthet. Ganthet sat in his chambers reading the reports he had received from both Kilowog and Lyra about the recruits. More specifically Naruto Uzumaki. While doing so, he had his blue lantern battery on the table next to him, collecting dust as it were. He thought to himself, taking his mind off the recruit for a moment. It felt so long ago now, but in truth it was only had been a few years. It was before Sinestro's fall, in fact. Ganthet had long tried to explain to the rest of the council that willpower would not be enough to weather the coming storm. That's not to say that the Green Lantern Corps has not done well for the last few centuries. Quite the contrary, in fact. However, given how now that there were now other Corps of Lanterns that had sprung from the others in the emotional spectrum, Ganthet felt that the Corps needed an edge. He pleaded with them to see that they also needed more. Will alone could not stem the tide alone. For what was the point of willpower without hope? Hope represented something that will could fight for. Unfortunately, only Sade seemed to see the benefit. The rest of the council, Appa especially, rejected this idea. Ganthet, however, was not deterred. Instead, he had forged a prototype Blue Lantern battery, a small version like the ones the Green Lanterns used individually. When Ganthet was finished, he tried to demonstrate its usefulness to the council, but he was again denied and forced down by the council. It was during the crisis with the Red Lanterns in frontier space that this came to a head. More specifically, when the planet Betrasis, Ganthet had, in his own admission, naively told Appa about his prototype being left on the interceptor ship. In doing so, he had indicated his own part in motivating Hal and Kilowog to steal the ship in the first place. Ganthet had been held in lockdown, and was about to be banished for what he had done. Fortunately for him, the blue battery managed to prove what he had been preaching to the council. During the battle on Betrasis, when all seemed lost and Queen Island was about to lose her planet to her brother and the Red Lanterns, the battery had activated and made the sky itself glow blue. Hal, Island, and Kilowog each received a massive power boost from it, defeated the Red Lanterns, and sent their planet-killer weapon known as the Liberator into space before it detonated. For his part, Ganthet had been given a reprieve, and Appa and the council had decreed that they would look into the matter more carefully. Officially anyway. In truth, Ganthet was on probation and the Blue Lantern battery was essentially mothballed. Even with the successful salvation of Betrasis, the Guardians still didn't want to admit that they were wrong, and still felt that willpower alone would be enough. Ganthet knew better. Unfortunately, aside from Sade, to whom he will always be grateful for her support, he was the only one that knew that Hope and Will combined could do so much more than either one could to do alone. He already finished on designs for a main battery, and already had 2 new power rings made. One made to Saint Walker. The other he hoped had reached the intended bearer. Regardless, he had made his decision to leave Oa and head out to create this new core, when Tomari's ring had chosen Naruto. These thoughts brought him back to the report in his hand. From Lyra's report, Naruto was making amazing progress for one who had only arrived just a little over 2 weeks ago. Naruto took to the ring like no one they have seen before. It seemed he was born to wield it. Naruto already started using constructs that were related to the weapons he had used on his world, calling his unlimited ninja toolkit, as it were. On top of that, Lyra had trained him in using other weapons. Since he was trained in more close-range weapons, she was ideal to teach him in this manner. He had already mastered the sword, or kenjutsu as they both called it, from what the report said. She also included in her training staffs, scythes, and other such weapons that Lyra knew he would be used to, which she also grasped on. Although there had been times that Naruto used some earth-based weapons such as a shotgun against her shield, when they sparred one time just to make sure to stay unpredictable. Regardless, Naruto had admitted feeling better using the constructs that fit both his and Lyra's preferences over weapons that were more modern-based. The strange part came from when they were done. The Ajnin would fly to Mogo, who for some reason had stayed in OA's orbit for longer than he normally did. Ganthet figured it was because Salak could scan his surface and could not track any lanterns there, mainly cause of the Living Planet Service's counselor to the core, and requested privacy for those he saw. What could he be doing on Mogo? Ganthet thought, putting the report down on his desk. He assumed it had something to do with perhaps learning the jutsu that was in the scroll that he brought with him too from his homeworld. But then begs the question as to why he would choose to go somewhere more isolated and outside of Guardian control. Something that Ganthet himself was going to seek before all of this happened. Regardless of what I had planned before, I made a promise to Lady Tsunade to look after the boy. That thought had brought a smile on his face. Ironically, Guardians are supposed to be without emotion, yet here I am having them. He teleported out of his room. Hall of Great Service. It didn't take Ganthet long to find Salak. Since Tomari's passing, the only two places he stayed in were the Planetary Citadel, or here in the Hall of Service. He found him sitting in his chair hovering with his control panels. Salak's ability to do multiple duties at once was one of the many reasons why he was chosen as Clarisse, which meant to be second in command of the Corps. "Good evening, Salak," Ganthet greeted. "Ganthet, can I help you, sir?" Salak addressed, turning from his computer screens to look at him directly. "I was wondering if you could find recruit Naruto for me," said Ganthet. "You can't find him telepathically?" he asked, already going back to his computer to find the young recruit. "No, I can't seem to find him for some reason," said the Guardian, which was the truth. Since Naruto arrived, he had tried to, subtly, read his mind. Not to get info, but to gauge him emotionally. For some reason, however, he had not been able to. Almost as if his mind were shielded. Yet another question mark in the case of Naruto Uzumaki. Checking, he's not in his quarters. Looks like he flew out again. His trail ends at Mogo. No surprise there, he makes frequent trips to him since his training with Lyra began, said to Clarisse. "Thank you, Salak, that will be all," said Ganthet, who then teleported out of the chamber as Salak returned to his duties. Ganthet teleported above Mogo, just outside of his atmosphere. That's to float down to his surface. No need to startle him or the boy, Ganthet thought to himself. As he began his approach, he noticed something happening on the planet below. It was a small glowing green light. That glow soon expanded and was so bright that Ganthet had to cover his eyes to protect his vision, but that wasn't all. He felt power like he had never had before. The closest equivalent to what he was feeling was what Hal and Kilowog described when the blue power battery had activated on Betrasis. The Guardian knew though that this was different. One thing was certain though. It was not coming from Mogo. Soon, after a few minutes, the light dissipated, and Ganthet let his arms down once the light level was safe for his eyes. He descended to the living planet. Something was going on, and he had a feeling Naruto was at the center of it. Mogo, moments earlier. Naruto was currently standing in a ruined area on Mogo. There were cuts running along the ground, and trees that had been shredded in his little patch of the living planet. Already he could see Mogo's green tendrils of energy repairing the damage that Naruto had inflicted. Even though Mogo said it was alright, the young lantern recruit could not help but still feel a little guilty for causing so much destruction. The training was mainly focused on his wind nature, and the jutsu from the scroll from his inheritance listed. Since then he had learned, or even mastered, many wind-style jutsu. Included were the Beast Wave Palm Jutsu and its variants, along with the Blades of Wind Jutsu, and the variants behind those. He started with this one first, given that he had seen it before with Sora, and aside from the Tornado Shield Jutsu, it was the easiest to perform. He also managed to refine the control of set jutsu, so now he would only create those tornadoes that need to be made when the situation allowed for it. From there it was a matter of learning the jutsu and then controlling it. Naruto soon found that wind was not only a powerful element but malleable. Each jutsu seemed designed to incorporate its versatility and power. Hence this jutsu that he was making the hand signs for. Wind style. Wind Dragon Jutsu, he exclaimed, finishing the hand signs. Seconds later the air shifted around in front of him and revealed a massive dragon made completely of wind. From there it leaped forward and smashed a row of forest in front of him before finally dissipating. That was the last jutsu in the scroll kit. "Seems like you got a handle on just about all of them," said Kurama with approval. Although Naruto with some pride in the fact that he managed to learn them so quickly. It's easy when you're used to having to train at such a quick pace with shadow clones to help, of course. "Ah, but you didn't use them that much. Just on the bigger jutsu," Kurama commented. Naruto nodded. As had become his custom, he still used many shadow clones to help him with his training, since as each disappeared, the knowledge of that clone passed on to him. What was interesting was how the ring did not appear on any of the clones. Mogo explained how the ring was a unique weapon that could not be copied like his shuriken or kunai from his ninja toolkit could be. That was something he needed to think about when going into battles in the future. Still would like to know about the other scroll though. Nothing wrong with adding to my arsenal even further. All in good time. You know you need to discover your second change in chakra nature before you can do that, Kurama explained. Indeed, young one. At the very least, this will make your training schedule easier now that you have mastered the last wind technique of your world, said Mogo. You sound a little happy when you say that, said Naruto out loud, looking at the massive destruction that his latest jutsu has done, and seeing that the forest was already a quarter rebuilt. Beginning to regret that offer you made now. Perhaps, just a bit, Mogo admitted with a tone of humor in his voice. Naruto smiled at that, then thought back to his hands and clenched his hands. If you want, I could help with some of the damage, he said, referring to the easy first aid jutsu that he learned from the medical scroll that Tsunade had slipped in. That jutsu was meant for healing people, Naruto, not planets. Do not stress yourself over it, please. I will be fine, Mogo responded. Besides, we have other things to worry about, said Kurama. Naruto knew what he was referring to. Now that he had mastered his wind jutsu, it was time to test out his modes with the ring on. Okay. So, I guess the first one would be normal sage mode. Kurama, you sure you can handle channeling natural energy, said the young man. Naruto could already feel Kurama shifting in his mind, getting into the mediation position needed in order to do what was needed. I know what to do, Naruto. Let's do this thing already, the fox exclaimed. They had both decided that when using normal sage mode, Kurama would be the one using this stance, instead of using shadow clones. Seeing as how he was in Naruto's head, he learned the same technique as he did, so it was simple enough. Naruto just shrugged and closed his eyes. Soon enough he felt the natural energy merge with his chakra. Almost instantly he opened his eyes and was in sage mode. He could feel the appearance of his eyes shift with the dark orange pigmentation around his eyes, and the eyes themselves taking on the appearance of a frog. He did feel something different though. His eye color he knew instinctively were still green. Another was when he looked at his uniform. It appeared to be a slight glow around him, while in sage mode. The mode also felt more powerful than it had in previous times before. What's happening, he thought to himself as he felt this new upsurge of power. I am uncertain of this, but it appears that your chakra and the ring seem to have some kind symbiotic bond, said Mogo. Looking down at his right hand, Naruto could see the ring glowing brighter than the rest of the suit. What does this mean then? He asked. I am not sure, young one. But if I had to guess, then the ring's power and your chakra have become linked in some way. This sage mode, as you call it, not only enhances your power but the ring as well. In theory at least, said the living planet. Only one way to find out, said Kurama, sitting still in his position. Naruto nodded in agreement. Sorry, Mogo, he called out in advance. He then pointed his ring at the part of the forest that Mogo wasn't regenerating and fired an energy beam. The beam was at least twice the size of the one he fired at the practice dummy. It leveled most of the area behind it. Wow, Naruto said, looking down at his glowing ring. Confirming that the ring and most likely the constructs he made with it would be enhanced, the young ninja decided to move towards himself a bit. He then started to fall into the movements of the frog kata that he learned from Fukasaku. Moving into the punches and kicks, he could feel that the movement felt faster than they had before, while in sage mode without the ring. The main difference was when he punched a tree that was at least 10 meters ahead of him and destroyed it utterly. Looking down at his first, he realized that not only was it more powerful than before, but the range of the attack had also increased. He then spun around doing a roundhouse kick and sent several trees around him flying into the air. This is amazing, Naruto exclaimed in excitement. Indeed. If this is what it's like in sage mode, what it's like in the others, said Kurama. We'll just have to find out then. But first I want to try one more thing, said Naruto. He then started channeling chakra into his fist while in sage mode. He then jumped into the air and smashed the ground beneath him. The force of the punch caused a large crater too from beneath him. From what he saw, it was 5 times the size of the one that Sakura or even Tsunade did when they used the same technique. Well, that answers that, said Naruto as he disengaged normal sage mode. Strangely, he felt only slightly fatigued. Unusual given that he usually felt exhausted afterwards. Yes, it does. Looks like you learned that ability well. But I thought the scroll only included the medical jutsu, Kurama commented as he moved out of his meditation stance. It does. But seeing both her and Sakura do it was enough for me to learn how to use it. It's actually simple. Both techniques are used by channeling chakra into the hands. And since my chakra control has never been better thanks to you, and I seem to have a knack for chakra manipulation, it was easy to put into use, Naruto explained in his head. Besides, you saw me use it plenty of times during the war. True enough. And add to the nature energy you get from sage mode, you become stronger than both of them combined. Stronger even that when you add the ring enhancing it. Oh, I like the way you think sometimes, Naruto, said Kurama with a heavy amount of pride for his Jinchuriki. Naruto smiled at that. Thanks. It probably goes even higher when we use the other modes as well. Speaking of which, shall we get back to business? The tailed beast asked. Before you do Naruto, there is something that I must point out, said Mogo, gaining both Naruto's and Kurama's attention. As I said, before I can mask your ring signature from Salak while you are on my surface. However, that only applies if ring levels are maintained at somewhat normal levels. Meaning what? Naruto asked, although he already had a feeling of where this was going. Meaning that I managed to hide your signature while in Sage mode. But if what you and Kurama are hinting that these other modes you have can go higher than that, then I may have difficulty shielding it from the core. This is not me trying to stop you. I only inform you of the risks involved. Mogo explained. Naruto nodded. I understand, Mogo, but we need to know now. Right now, I don't see anything upring-wise after my Sage mode transformation, but I have to know if there are any other drawbacks. Could you let us know if we go past the breaking point? Very well. If I sense that you will be detected, I will inform you immediately. Mogo agreed. Well, with that said, can we continue now? Said Kurama with a little too much glee upon hearing what Mogo said, which made the young recruit a little nervous. He shrugged it off though, and they went on with the test. Unlike with Sage mode, there was no need for either Kurama or Naruto to stand still or anything. Naruto just closed his eyes and activated his nine-tailed chakra mode. Immediately the ring glowed once again, even brighter than before. Almost instantly, Naruto could feel the change happen as he opened his eyes. Like with Sage mode, Naruto could feel to have even more power than he did before. Looking at himself, he was again encased in his chakra shroud. However, instead of it being colored in yellow flames like normal, it was instead green flames that he was in. Another thing that was different was that instead of the symbols of his clan on his shoulders and midsection were the symbol of the Green Lantern Corps on them. Finally, his eyes remained green. Naruto clenched his right hand into a fist, noting the glowing power ring on his hand, and slammed it into his left palm. The force sent a small shock wave, and he could hear the sound of the impact. Amazing, he muttered to himself. Feeling the power, he had almost made him euphoric. Yeah, and it isn't just you. I'm feeling it as well. Almost as if the ring is giving you and me a power boost and vice versa, said Kurama. He also looked down at himself in Naruto's mind. Gah, what the hell? What's wrong? Naruto asked. You aren't the only one turning green here, kid. I am glowing green too in here, the tailed beast exclaimed. Naruto had to bite back a laugh about that, but Kurama still heard it. This isn't funny, he said. Naruto managed to stifle his laugh and looked to his ring. Ring, what's the current power level that you have at the moment? Naruto asked the weapon in his hand. Power levels currently holding at 400%. The ring told him. Which make the previous levels in Sage mode lower than that, said Kurama. I don't know, kid. It might not be a good idea to try anything with us in this mode. I mean, we have kind of a clear idea of what the ring is doing to us, and we don't want to risk harming Mogo with our level of power now, or in tailed beast mode. Or heaven forbid you start using the old man's senjutsu of the 6 paths. Yeah, you're right. A beam from the ring in this form could destroy a lot more than just the area around us, never mind any constructs, the young ninja said. In that case, let's take it up a notch to tailed beast mode, and call it a night. Agreeing with his partner, Naruto once again channeled their chakra together, just as they have always done during the war. Only now, Kurama was complete and whole again with both the yin and yang halves of his chakra. Even without the ring, Naruto could already feel even more powerful than he was during the war. The ring amplified it even more. So, when turning to tailed beast mode, he felt that power grow, so much he feared he might explode from the amount. Ah, hahaha. He screamed at first in panic before laughing at the exultation he felt when the transformation completed. Looking down, he saw how his form once again was different than before. Unlike without the ring, the shroud he was in did not produce a cloak this time. Instead, the shroud surrounded his uniform with the same numerous swirl patterns that now turned into complete circles. The front of his uniform had the symbol of the Green Lanterns on it, while turning into a dark green with 3 Magatama on his collar. Naruto stood there reveling in the power he felt. Ring power levels are at 1000%. Energy levels far above standard levels, said the ring that was glowing even brighter than before. Understatement of the year, said the young recruit. I don't know about you, kid, but judging from the amount of power you now have while we're in this form, it would be best to use it in dire emergencies. Especially, as I mentioned before, the 6 paths mode. That one you should only use if the shit really hits the fan, said Kurama. No kidding. I'm starting to think. Naruto, Mogo said, interrupting his train of thought. Stop what you are doing now. As I was afraid of the amount of power you are now putting off with your ring, has reached to a point where I am unsure if I can contain your ring's signature. You must transform back now. As quickly as he said it, Naruto immediately transformed back to normal. However, as he did, he sensed something was above the living planet's atmosphere. Looking down. Among everything else, the ring had also enhanced his sensing abilities. Naruto immediately went into the forest to hide. I believe you managed to change back before Salak got a fix on your ring's signature, Mogo reported. However, it appears one of the guardians was already on his way here and saw your display from above me. Fortunately, it's Ganthet and none of the others seem to have noticed. Naruto nodded in response. Ring, how much energy do I have left? Ring power levels have returned to normal levels. Energy capacity at 95%, said the AI. Ha, thought it would be lower from all those transformations. Best not to look a gift horse in the mouth though, said Naruto as he used the ring on himself. For his part, Ganthet had managed to figure out where Naruto had been around on Mogo, judging from the repairs that he was making on some of the areas where he had been damaged. From the look of the area, it seemed that the trees had been cut down, and the ground had slash marks. Good afternoon, Mogo, said Ganthet pleasantly. Hello, Ganthet. How may I be of assistance? Said Mogo. I was wondering if you knew where Naruto was on your surface. Judging from the damage that you have suffered, I take it your time with him has been more than to help with any psychological issues. Am I correct? Ganthet inquired. Indeed. The boy was, and still is, reluctant to use me, but he needed somewhere private to practice and learn the jutsu that he brought with him from his homeworld. Ganthet nodded. Of course he would. And both he and Mogo knew that even though Ganthet himself would be alright with it, the rest of the council might not be so lenient towards this activity. Ganthet then started looking around to see if he could find the young recruit. Though he could not read his mind, one of the many things he is hoping to find out today, he could sense that he was still here. In fact, he was still here. Mogo, do you know where on your surface Naruto happens to be at the moment? He asked. He is closer than you might think, said Mogo cryptically. Could you be more specific? Ganthet questioned. Behind you actually, said Naruto's voice. Ganthet immediately turned around but found nothing there. That is until the boy just appeared into existence right in front of him. Ganthet was at first shocked at how he managed to do that until he looked to see his ring glowing. You managed to use the ring to refract the light around you, making yourself invisible, he said. An advanced technique. Most lanterns don't even know about that ability. Yeah. That's how I managed to get in front of Lyra-sensei, to use that shotgun to shatter her shield. Although I had thought of using senbone instead of bullets, said Naruto. But I get the feeling you're not here to talk about my training with Lyra. No, I'm not, said Ganthet, floating down to the ground to sit down. Naruto did the same, crossing his legs on the ground to sit as well. So what do you want to talk about, sir? He asked. Naruto, when it's just you and me, just call me Ganthet. I know how the most of the core look at the council. Rest assured that I am not as would Hal Jordan call them, sticks in the mud, said Ganthet with a friendly smile. I made a promise to Tsunade. What kind of promise? Naruto asked. Just to make sure that you are prepared for what is to come when you become a Green Lantern in full. Ganthet responded. I like to think I'm doing fine on that front, said Naruto. Indeed. I read the reports from both Lyra and Kilowog. Your progress is amazing to say the least. You're doing in weeks what many others cannot do until they become full lanterns themselves. It is only a matter of time, the Guardian explained. I like to think Arisha and the others are making progress as well, said Naruto, mentioning the new friends that he made here. You would be correct. In fact, I dare say that you may have inspired them to push themselves harder on your account. Their time is drawing near as well for the final test, said Ganthet. He looked to see that Naruto had a small smile when he heard that, though it seemed dejected. In any case, there are things that you do need to learn. As I explained to Tsunade, your race is new to the galactic scene, since you just now know that you are not alone in the universe. Therefore, it is my obligation to teach on at least some of the races that you will be working with and protecting in your sector, Ganthet explained. Don't take this the wrong way, Ganthet, but I don't seem to recall you giving this additional training to Hal or John when they first arrived. And humans are almost as unaware of what goes on in space as my people, said Naruto. Yes, but they are approaching it. They have achieved limited space travel, and are aware of sentient life forms beyond their own, as you well know from the database. You and your species, on the other hand, have only now just become aware. Granted, you have handled better than the humans, but I hope you can see the issue here, explained the Guardian. Naruto nodded in understanding of this, even if a part of him disagreed. So, what kind of training will you be providing then? He asked, getting back on topic. The database allows you to access the basic information of every race that is the Guardian database. However, they do not tell you how each government works on each individual world. It is here that I wish to show and teach you, so that you may be able to handle situations that will allow to hopefully limit the use of your ring and other powers. In other words, stop a battle, possibly a war, without firing a shot, said Ganthet. In other words, the art of diplomacy, said Naruto in almost bored tone. Ganthet, if what you say is true, and that me being a lantern is close at hand, I don't see how we are gonna find time to do this. Normally you would be correct. There is a faster way, however, Ganthet responded. And what would that be? Said Naruto cautiously. My race has many abilities, Naruto. One of them is telepathy on a very high scale. The way I suggest to teach you would be to enter your mind. The training inside the mindscape is much faster than here in real time, he explained. But then couldn't you find out stuff about me? Say things I didn't want to know. Naruto asked, already becoming wary of it. I assure you, young man, I have no intention whatsoever of invading your privacy. Your mind is still your own. If you wish to show me anything about yourself, it would be of your own volition, and I would not disobey it. The guardian responded. Except that isn't what I'm worried about. Thanks to you, Kurama, we can keep him out, but if he enters my mind, there's no way I can hide you. Thought Naruto, talking to his partner in his head. Mind made up, he went to politely refuse Ganthet's offer, but his furry friend decided to put his 2 cents in. Naruto, I think you should take him up on his offer, said Kurama. What? Naruto responded, surprised at what Kurama just said. Think about it. The dictionary has much in the way of facts and places, but does absolutely nothing in terms of learning the politics of said races. And since your progress is going quickly, the sooner we get it done, the better. As for him discovering me, we both knew sooner or later that someone in the core, a guardian I might add, would find out. Might as well be him, he explained. I don't know, Kurama. What if he tells the council? Naruto questioned while Ganthet sat in front of him waiting for his answer. You used to see a little good in everyone, Naruto. Why can't you see it in him now? The tailed beast questioned. Naruto realized then that Kurama was right. Hal had spoken of Ganthet with great respect, and after talking with him on the way to Oa, he knew that he was an old but kind soul. He made his decision. I accept your offer then, Ganthet. When can we start? Said Naruto. Now if you would like, said Ganthet, pleased that Naruto had agreed. Very well. But I do need to warn you. My mind is not exactly safe, the young recruit warned. I will be prepared, Naruto, do not worry, said Ganthet in almost a grandfather-like tone. We'll see, said Naruto. In that case, just close your eyes. Naruto did as he was told. From there the guardian had closed his own eyes as he entered Naruto's mind. Naruto's mindscape. When Ganthet opens his eyes, the first thing he notices is that his robes, particularly the area of his legs, had gotten wet. Looking down, he found himself sitting on water. Standing up quickly, he found himself in what appeared to be a large sewer tunnel. Naruto, he called out, trying to find him in the landscape as his voice echoed throughout the tunnel. At first he heard no response. That is until he heard, or rather felt, a large tremor that shook the entire area. There was another after that was even bigger. And another. And another. Something's headed my way, he thought to himself, realizing that these tremors were in fact footsteps. Indeed, something is, said a growling voice in the darkness ahead, reading his mind. Ironic to be trying to have private thoughts in someone else's mind. Ganthet stood his ground as whatever that was in this boy's mind. But even he felt a twinge of fear when he saw the thing that was here come out from the darkness. This creature was in the shape of a large red fox with red-orange fur with red slitted eyes. Interestingly, its upper body appeared humanoid with its front legs having opposing thumbs. However, what made it strike out was the 9 tails that it possessed. Seeing those tails and the creature itself, Ganthet quickly realized what and who this creature is. The Kyuubi no Kitsune, he said. Correct, said the tailed beast with a wide toothy grin. Ganthet's hands glowed as he prepared to fight. I thought we agreed we were done using this place, said the voice of Naruto, who also came out of the same tunnel. What? I thought it was a good place to get a scare out of him, said Kurama as he stopped his menacing act to look at Naruto. Why do you need to scare him at all? I thought you said it was okay to let him in on our little secret, Naruto asked. I did, but I wanted to make sure. Seeing as he was willing to stand up to me proved that at least he isn't a wimp, said the beast. But still did have to be here in this tunnel again, said Naruto. Couldn't we have tried something else? Excuse me, said Ganthet with his hands no longer glowing and having a look of confusion. Could someone please explain to me what is going on? Said Naruto sheepishly, while scratching the back of his head. Sorry, Ganthet. I didn't get to introduce you. This is my partner, Kurama. The tailed beast you know as the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Partner? Ganthet questioned. Naruto, forgive me, but how can such a being be inside your head? How is it even possible? Tsunade did not tell you about the Jinchuriki? Kurama asked. Jinchuriki? No, that word never came up during my conversation with her. She did inform me about the incident involving you, but that was it, said Ganthet. HMPH figures. Being a cage, she must have wanted you tell him about that part, Naruto. Given that you happen to be an expert on the subject, said Kurama. Yeah, and it is still standard policy to keep that kind of info from outsiders, said Naruto. Okay, Ganthet, you said that since this is still my mind, I could show info basically on my own terms, right? The guardian nodded. Then examine my memories then. Neither me nor Kurama will stop you, he said. Why? Ganthet asked. We gotta trust someone on the council. Frankly, from what both he and I have seen, you're the only guardian that doesn't seem to have an agenda. At least not against me, said Naruto. You seem awfully quick to trust me, Naruto. How do you know that I don't? Asked Ganthet, surprised how much trust both him and the tailed beast had shown. Because I told him. And also Naruto, for the most part, happens to be a good judge of character, and can be more observant than most people give him credit for," said Kurama. "Thanks, I think," said Naruto. For his part, Ganthet had to admit that he was curious as to what he would find in the boy's memories. So given that and the fact that somehow the most powerful of the tailed beasts just happens to be inside his mind, he decided to take a leap of faith. "Very well," said Ganthet. Almost exactly as he said it, the Guardian suddenly got a flash forward of information in his mind. Like one of those movies that humans watched only in faster motion. Even so, Ganthet's mind was able to process it. The memories he saw started from Naruto's childhood, to his time in the ninja academy, to finding out that he was a Jinchuriki. Thus, in turn finding out the reason why Kurama was put it in the first place. From there his adventures with Team 7 up until Sasuke Uchiha's defection. The 2.5 training with his godfather Jiraiya. The battles with the Akatsuki. His fight with Pain, also known as Nagato. His reunion with Sasuke, which then led to his involvement with the Fourth Great Ninja War and helping to turn the tide. The visions then turned to his confrontations with Obito Uchiha and the man he was pretending to be. Naruto and Sasuke standing side by side to face Madara Uchiha. From there the war finally reached his end with Naruto and Sasuke sealing Kaguya back into her prison. The vision stopped the instant it showed Naruto and Sasuke standing on a river. "That's enough for now," said Naruto, looking directly into Ganthet's eyes with a sad look. "That last one is still raw for me. Though I am better than I was. Suffice it to say that should give you all you need about me." "Yes, it was," said Ganthet. "You haven't had the easiest of lives, have you, Naruto Uzumaki?" "No. But it's had its moments," Naruto said, shrugging his shoulders. "And its share of triumphs. One of those being the renewed friendship with your partner," said the Guardian, turning to the tailed beast. He then floated up and bowed his head. "I acknowledge you, Kurama, as a fully sentient being. And I realize the amount of trust that both you and Naruto have shown to me and the initial risk that you considered before making this decision. Rest assured it will not be put at risk on my part," the Guardian vowed. "We appreciate it, Ganthet," said Naruto. Kurama nodding in agreement. "Now I believe you were to teach the kid here about the subtleties of politics across this new universe that we have just entered to?" questioned Kurama. "Oh yes, I did," said Ganthet, getting back on the reason for this mental visit. "But is it possible that we could have more pleasant surroundings? I don't mean to tell you how to use your mindscape, but this dank dark tunnel would not be my first choice." "Yes, sorry. Kurama's idea to bring this back this one time," said Naruto. Just as he said it, that tunnel soon changed to an open field. The same one that Naruto and Kurama when they now wanted to talk face to face. "You should be aware, young one, that it is rare for me to find someone outside my brethren with a mental landscape as well developed as your own," said Ganthet, in awe of how it changed so seamlessly. "Must be another benefit of being a Jinchuriki," said Naruto, which gave Kurama a small smile. "Indeed," said Ganthet, turning to face him. "Now Naruto, despite what Kurama said, I do not wish to teach you just the politics of each world, but of the people and the governments themselves. Teach you what to expect and how best to approach a situation to them. Though how you handle it out there in your sector is and should be up to you, my fellow guardians can and will scrutinize you and your work." "I understand," said Naruto. "While we have these lessons, I shall make sure that I have your undivided attention. As I saw through your memories, you have had a habit of sleeping through class in school. It will not happen here," said Ganthet sternly. Naruto just rubbed the back of his head, blushing in embarrassment, with Kurama trying to stifle his laughter. "On that note, let's begin," said the Guardian, pulling up an image of a world. "We will start with the planet Rimber." From there, that was the schedule that followed in the weeks that came. Naruto would first train with Lyra into the late afternoon. From there, Naruto continued to increase his weapon proficiency. To his continued surprise, he found himself having a knack for Kenjutsu, and not just with the ninjato. When it came to swords though, he still preferred one-handed to 1.5-hand swords. Ones he could use easily. He also mastered some polearms, and of course added the usual weapons from his ninja days. Lyra had also taken it to improve on his hand-to-hand by showing where in the body would be best to attack from, and to watch an opponent for any physical weakness and to exploit. She also told him to see Dr. Nadu on where other species' weaknesses were. From there, Naruto knew not only how to attack, but where to attack if need be. Hence why it seemed Kilowog wished to keep from fighting the boy again anytime soon. After that, he would go back to Mogo to continue refining his wind jutsu, but mainly he went there when Ganthet had time to teach his lessons on the universe at large. As for his little experiment with his modes after he and Ganthet returned to Osalok, had come to both of them and asked what happened. Apparently, the energy inside Naruto's ring had spiked immensely for a brief second before dissipating. Ganthet had said that he was working on his blue battery, and had asked Naruto. After all, we all had our secrets. As far as Naruto's fellow recruits were concerned, they were also progressing well. Each time at lunch, they all seemed to gather around talking. The other veteran lanterns could not help but notice how they seemed to look to him as a leader. Kilowog even noted how they seemed to perform better, because they knew he had their backs. For his part, Naruto didn't seem to notice, or pretended not to. After weeks of training, both Kilowog and Lyra decided it was time for their final test in the hazard simulation facility. Basically, they were each going to be in a simulation of the planets they were on when they first arrived. The two major corrections in this were that it was not life-threatening, and they could use their rings. Suffice it to say, they all passed, and now were in the main battery room. The four soon-to-be lanterns stood in front of the massive battery, to which Naruto could not help but be in awe of. Alright, poozers. Gotta say that you lot were some of the best recruits me and Lyra have had in some time. But like everything else, this stage of your career is now over. From this day forth you will officially part of the Green Lantern Corps. Where your circle fills with our symbol, wear it with pride, said Kilowog. Naruto could not help but see a look of pride in his eyes when he said those words. With that same pride on her face, Lyra took over. Speak the oath to the main battery. From there you will receive your mark and join our corps officially with all the rights, privileges and responsibility that comes with being a Green Lantern. They each stepped forward, raised their ring hands, and with one voice said the oath. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. The main battery glowed brighter, and tendrils of energy came and went into their rings. Whatever energy they lost was restored, and they found that the white circle they bore were filled with mark of the Green Lantern Corps. Welcome, said a deep voice telepathically, which startled Naruto. He looked to the others, and it seemed he was the only one who heard it. Kurama, was that Mugo just now? He asked. No kid, that wasn't him. Hard as it is to believe, it sounded like it came from the battery, he said. Naruto nodded. He could feel the presence of something inside the battery. It was similar to how Kurama was inside him, which was probably why he was the only one who heard the voice. The difference was that whatever was inside felt larger and stronger than even his partner. And he knew that it was much, much older than him as well. But despite this, as he felt the process being finished, he knew that there was no danger. In fact, the entity gave a sense of welcoming that seems infectious to his friends, even though they didn't know it. Looks like the battery is hiding something as well, he thought to himself. Naruto, yelled Arizo as she approached him, snapping him out of his thoughts. Come on, we're having a celebration before we have to start our duties tomorrow. Right behind you guys, he said. As he left, he looked back at the battery. One more mystery to solve. After the celebration, it was getting late, so they all went back to their quarters. Though they had to carry Galeus back to his, because he drank too much. Naruto then created a mirror construct to look himself over. Looking at his chest and seeing the symbol that was now on his chest gave him a large sense of pride. But as he looked over his uniform, he frowned. What wrong? Outfit too tight? Asked Kurama. No, Naruto responded with a roll of his eyes. The uniform fits perfectly, you know that. No, it's too generic. I mean, besides the gloves and boots, it looks exactly like Hal's. Well, you know that the suit is made of the same energy as the construct, so why not change it to something more your style? Kurama responded. Naruto nodded. In fact, he had something in mind. Suddenly he focused his ring and made his new uniform before going to bed for the start of his new duties. The next day, Kilowog was sitting in the dining hall eating his food, looking over the report for the next batch of recruits. As he looked at them, he couldn't help but rub his stomach at what one of the last batch of recruits did to him. Hope that never happens again, he thought to himself. Kilowog, you there? He heard Hal's voice from the ring. Kilowog rolled his eyes, put down the report and answered. I'm here, Jordan, what is it? Meet me in the planetary citadel. What's going on? He asked, already getting up, knowing going to the council chamber means serious business. Razor's back, said Hal. Kilowog's eyes widened in surprise and immediately stormed out of the dining hall. Planetary citadel. Kilowog flew through the gate into the chamber. There he found the council in session as always, with Hal, Jordan and Salak at the center, typing on his moving station as usual. Also there in the center was an old friend of his and Jordan's. Razor, he exclaimed, grabbing him into a hug. Hello, Kilowog, he wheezed out while getting him in his own embrace. As Kilowog let him go, both he and Jordan noticed the new look that Razor had acquired. Or actually the new color. His uniform was still the same as it was when he left Oa to find Aya. The artificially created being that used to be inside their former ship, the Interceptor, who then became at one time a threat to the entire universe and the love of Razor's life. Only instead of it being in red, it was in blue and black version of it, with the symbol of the blue lanterns on his chest, instead of that of the red lanterns. Nice colors, kid. But I thought the whole blue lantern thing was on hold, said Kilowog. As did we, said Apple, looking at Ganthet with suspicion. Before that happened, I managed to create 2 power rings as a sort of test drive, and Hal, Jordan would put into words. I wanted to make sure that it works, he said. We will discuss it later, said Renaker. Tell me, Razor, he said, turning to the now blue lantern. The last time we had heard or seen of you, you went into deep space looking for whatever remained of Aya, the entity that nearly destroyed all of us. Tell me, did you find anything conclusive to your search? Razor turned to face the council. My quest to find her. That you mean? Appa interrupted. My quest to find her, he said again, but glaring at the Guardian, was and still is a personal mission of mine. And since I have no association with the Green Lantern Corps, I don't have any reason to answer that question. Nor is it the reason I have come now. Which is what exactly, said Sade before Appa could go on another of his tirades. Using his ring he projected of an image in blue of a female Green Lantern. They was one of them by the symbol on her uniform. From what they could tell of the image she had curly hair and blue skin. Everyone in the room knew who it was though. That is Tomi 5. Green Lantern of 0056. Said Salak. She has been listed missing for the last 6 months. We would have presumed her dead had it not been the fact that her ring had not returned to or found a new host. Indeed. Until now. Said Razor. He then projected a large floating fortress with a futuristic castle in the center of it. On the front of it was the Sinestro Corps symbol. This is where she is being held. It's a fort somewhere in the aerial system circulating around Belter 4. We believe this to be used some sort of station, but now it has been repurposed by Sinestro's people as base. This station, like the rest of them, fall in and out of the antimatter universe. Who's we exactly? Asked Appa. Saint Walker and I occasionally work with the Star Sapphires from time to time. It was them who tipped us off, said Razor. If what you say is true, then why didn't they communicate with us directly? We have a treaty with them last I believed. Appa responded. This matters how exactly? Said Hal before Razor could answer. What we do know is that one our own is stuck in enemy prison for God knows how long. We need to move now. I agree with you, Hal, but take a look at that place. It's a stinking fortress capable of housing at least 50 to 200 lanterns. We would need at least that many to storm it, and even then they could move it back to the antimatter land anytime they want, said Kilowog. If we are to save her, then we would have to sneak in and rescue her, said Razor. Fine, then let's go then, said Hal. Green Lantern of Sector 2814, ordered Appa. You have not been given permission to leave this council chambers. Appa, with all due respect, the more time we waste the chances for Tomi 5's survival lessons. We must act now, said Ganthet. The council will make its decision as one before we send lanterns on a mission, Ganthet. You know this, said one of the fellow guardians. Ganthet was forced into silence. Corsi, said Appa, referring to Salak by his rank. Isn't Belter 4 in Sector 2813? Indeed it is, said Salak. He then realized what he meant. You can't mean. I do, Corsi, said Appa with a small smile on his face. I don't understand the problem. If you wish to bring Tomari, then he would only strengthen our cause, said Razor. Tomari is dead, kid. Has been for a few weeks, said Kilowog. Eyes widened. Razor then realized how out of touch since his journey began. I see. So how long has his replacement been a lantern? He just finished his training. He's supposed to start today with his first patrol, said Hal. Outraged, Razor turned to the council. You would send us a lantern who has barely come out of Kilowog's training to help in a mission that requires stealth and precision, not to mention, if need be, heavy combat. If we get Tomi 5 out alive, you would give us a rookie to save one of your own. Correction. We would give him to you, Renegade. Hal, Jordan and Kilowog will not accompany you for this mission, said Appa. Both Hal and Kilowog were aghast at this declaration. Are you serious? Kilowog yelled. Appa, this is highly unusual. A mission such as this requires as much assistance as we can give, said Sade. She and Ganthet, as well as some of the other guardians, also spoke in turn until Appa raised his hand to stop the arguing. As I understand, the new Green Lantern of Sector 2813 has shown skill while in training, and I understand that his species happen to specialize in stealth missions, given their profession, do they not? He said furthermore, the more numbers there are in this mission, the less chance for success is there not. Neither of the three of them could offer a rebuttal on that. Nor could any of the council. Then it is settled then. Appa, please, Ganthet tried to speak. Enough. The council has decided. Razor will be assigned the Green Lantern of that sector to assist him, and that's it. He then looked to Salak. Summon him, Clarisse, he ordered. Yes, sir. He grumbled and started sending the communication. Let me save you the trouble, Salak, said a voice. They looked around, but could find no one. Ganthet, however, was now the one smiling. Then they saw Naruto walk forth, uncrossing his arms, appearing out of nowhere once again using the ring's cloaking ability. Only he was now in a new uniform of his own design. It was more like lighter version of the armor that he saw the samurai of his homeworld use, only much lighter, so he could move around easily. It had a front chest piece with shoulder pads on it, was still black on the insides of it. His gloves covered his wrist and hands with vambraces that extended to the back of his hands. In addition, his boots now reached his shins with shin guards that reached down to cover the top of his feet. On his legs there were knee pads that looked just as much for offense as well as defense. The Green Lantern symbol had been changed. Instead of a white circle with a symbol on it was now a black circle with a symbol outlined in white. Finally, Naruto now had a green headband on his head, and wore a face mask that covered the bottom half of his face including his nose. 2813 What is the meaning of this? You were not authorized to be here. Appa exclaimed. Excuse me, but were you not about to order me to come into the citadel in the first place? Asked Naruto. When Appa could not come up with an answer, Naruto continued. That was rhetorical, by the way. To answer the other question as to why I'm here, I was about to head to my first patrol when I saw Kilowog coming here so urgent that he left his meal. Now it had to be important if he would leave his meal unfinished, that much is certain. Kilowog gave him a slight glare at that crack, but Razor actually smiled. You would be correct. That is the only thing that takes him away from a meal. Naruto then held out his hand. Naruto Uzumaki, Green Lantern of Sector 2813 at your service. Razor took the hand and shook it. Naruto, are you sure you're ready for this? Asked Ganthet. That sector is my turf. Plus one of us is in trouble on said turf. Do you even have to ask? Said Naruto. Ganthet just smiled and shook his head. Naruto then had one more question. What's the plan? Orbit of Belter 4. Naruto and Razor flew towards the planet. They had been silent throughout the trip, though sharing a few words now and again. From what I heard, you were Renegade Dread, said Naruto. I was. Early in my search, the second ring of Ganthet's attempt to form a new core had chosen me. It represents the color of blue, which represents hope. Razor explained. I didn't even know there was a core for hope, said Naruto. Technically there isn't, it's just Saint Walker and myself that make up the number, said Razor. So, I take it, you know of the emotional spectrum then? Yeah, Ganthet told me about it, said Naruto, remembering his lessons from the Wise Guardian. Still, he wanted to ask about this Blue Lanterns, and why there were only 2 so far, but decided to table that for another day. Aren't you going to ask why the Blue Ring chose me? Razor asked. I was in the chamber, remember? I know why, said Naruto. As far as if I'm going to ask, whether or not you found Ai or not, the answer is I'm not going to ask. That's your business, not mine, despite what some of the Guardians might say. Razor looked at him surprised and relief when he said that. Thank you, he said. Naruto nodded. They then spent the rest of the journey in silence. As they got closer, the young lantern could see why this planet's orbit could be used as a base. The planet was surrounded by a whole ring of asteroids. From there it was easy to hide such a thing. They had managed to hide behind one of the asteroids with both Naruto and Razor, using binocular constructs to look at the base. Your image of it didn't do it justice. We got sentries just about everywhere looking out, most especially on the 20 feet wall they built for themselves, said Naruto, looking at the high walls where guards patrolled the area. Around it seemed to be a field of some kind. He scanned with his ring, that found that it was actually a stasis field to give the asteroid its own artificial environment, meaning there was air that they could breathe. He could also see that there were yellow lanterns stationed inside. When they have enough numbers, this outpost will be used to attack and subvert all the planets in this sector. Its design is the first step in taking sectors from the Guardians and getting a foothold here, said Razor. I thought they did that already when they made their deal with the Kundians, said Naruto. Sort of. Theirs is more of a lucrative deal. The Sinestro Corps helps them conquer new worlds, and in return they get credits and resources. Sinestro and his minions are still mercenaries, though I know he has plans beyond being just for hire, said Razor. This base was only made recently. You can't tell, especially in the keep itself has not been fully completed. My guess they built it shortly after your predecessor died. Naruto nodded and looked back to the base. He then saw something of interest. He saw what looked to be a large tower that had no windows on it on the west side of the base. It was the only one that didn't have windows in the entire fortress. There, he pointed. That has to be where they keep the prisoners. Yes, but the problem then becomes how to get inside it, said Razor. Naruto looked it over to find something they could use. He then looked at the bottom of the asteroid that the base was sitting on, and found several vents big enough for one person to crawl through. Razor followed his line of sight, and immediately the two realized what they needed to do. As if reading each other's minds, they flew low, as to not be detected by an early warning system that they may or may not have established, and managed to crawl through the vents, though they had to keep their shields on, because it looked like some of the vents had not been fully made yet. Whoever runs this place is not doing a good job with the scheduling of construction. This place is half finished, said Naruto. Hence why we can move like this. Razor responded in a matter-of-fact tone. Not to mention the fact that they left these vents big enough for people to crawl through, Naruto commented. Actually, you will find that happens very often in this universe, that everyone has buildings that have vents this size, said Razor. That made Naruto stop right then and there. My world doesn't have this issue as far as I know, he said. Razor just stood there with a roll in his eyes as they continued moving. Then you should be glad that your race happens to be one of the very few that does not have this easy of a security breach. But why do so many races have these in their buildings? Naruto asked. Now the Blue Lantern stopped for a moment to think on it. "A valid question," he said. They both shrugged and got back to the task at hand. Razor, who was in front, put a hand out and told them to stop. He then pointed downward and Naruto then nodded, knowing that they had reached where they kept the prisoners. "We are above the cell entrance. That is where they are keeping her," said Razor. When they looked into the vent, they saw only 2 guards there. From there they waited until their backs were turned, counted to 3, then broke the vent and Naruto and Razor knocking them out. Naruto put his guard in a sleeper hold, cutting off his oxygen, while Razor just punched his guard's lights out. Both of them laid the guards against the wall. Naruto then looked to Razor. "We need to hurry. I don't think there's anyone else in this hallway, but who knows how long that will last," he said. Razor nodded and looked to open the cell and found a problem. "The damn thing needs a code to open," he said. Naruto then shared his frustration as both of the guards were unconscious. "No time for niceties," he said. Pointing his ring, he fired an energy beam which blew the door open. However, they looked inside and found that it was empty. "What the hell? You sure your intel was correct?" Naruto questioned. "Yes. Tomi-Fi was supposed to be here in this cell," said Razor. "Well, she isn't anymore," said Naruto. Looking at the guard, Razor punched an ugly 3-eyed humanoid, grabbed by the front of his uniform, and forced him into the wall, immediately waking him up. "Where's the prisoner you had here?" he questioned. The guard laughed. "Why should I tell you?" Naruto then made a kunai construct and stabbed it into his shoulder. He then clasped the guard's mouth to muffle out his screams. When he was done shaking from the pain, the guard looked up at him. "Do you think pain is going to make me talk?" "No. I assume you're going to talk before I make my construct explode, take out your arm, and force you to bleed to death," said Naruto. The defiance in the guard then turned to fear as he glanced and the kunai still stuck in his shoulder. "Now tell me where she is." The men took her to the courtyard. "The warden of this place is planning some kind of demonstration there with her. The bitch didn't give any information, so he figures the guys would have some fun before we kill her." Naruto clenched at the kunai, and the guard thought he was going to twist it further. Instead, he seemed to what appeared to be electricity or lighting coming from his hand. Naruto then looked at his hand and noticed it as well, but was more concentrated on what the guard just said. "When is this?" he asked. "It's starting right now. All the lanterns are present there. There's nothing you can do," he said with a smile. "Razor," he said suddenly to his partner, who stood there in silent rage at hearing what they were going to do to the prisoner. "You said Tomi-Fi was ambushed?" Razor nodded. "They must have got her when she was charging her ring then." "That is the most likely case, yes," said Razor. "It also means that they have her battery." "That's true," said Naruto, turning to the minion, who nodded. "Where?" "The armory," he said. Naruto then shoved him to the Blue Lantern. "Take my friend here to it then." He then looked to Razor. "If he tries anything, knock him out or kill him, makes no difference to me. You can't go to the courtyard on your own." "You saw it, there were at least 50 of them out there," said Razor. "You let me worry about that. When you have the battery, wait at least 30 minutes before coming to the courtyard. I'll contact you when it's done. If you don't hear from me by then, get back to OA. The Guardians will know what to do next," he ordered. "Naruto," Razor called out before the young lantern went out. "Good luck." Naruto nodded. He then used his ring's cloak and moved towards the hallway as Razor pushed the guard, who was looking at the kunai still stuck in his arm. From there, Naruto managed to move towards the courtyard, going through the supposed throne room of the place. The guard was right about one thing. Everyone was going to be there. Good, he thought to himself. Seeing the wall itself was empty, he climbed on it and looked onto the events below. The 50 yellow lanterns stood in a circle surrounding what appeared to be their commander. He was a tall man, at least 8 feet tall, who was completely bald with a short gray beard, who moved like someone who had some prowess, but was ultimately lazy. "Well, my fellow members of the Sinestro Corps, as you all well know, we have had the honor of having a special guest of ours for the past few months. But I realized in all that time she hasn't had a proper welcome here. And since she hasn't been speaking to us in any sort of fashion, except for the occasional insult, I think maybe it's time to show her a little hospitality," he said, which made them all laugh and have smirks on their faces. He then made a gesture with his hand, and soon enough 2 guards were dragging a struggling Tomi-Fi out into the middle of the circle of vultures that now surrounded her. She was, suffice it to say, mess up. Her uniform was in tatters, her face beaten and bloody with her right eye swelling, her ginger-colored hair in a mess. There were cuts on her both of her cheeks. Yet through all that, she still could not be beaten. Naruto could see it in those bright green eyes of hers. "So Miss Tomi-Fi, feeling more appreciative of our hospitality now?" he mocked asked. Her answer was to spit blood on his face. It landed on his right cheek. The big man stopped smiling and wiped the blood off his cheek. He then punched her in the stomach, which forced her down on the ground face first, with the guards holding her there. "Don't worry, boys and girls," said the pig as he stood over her. "You all get a turn to do with her as you will. Assuming I leave anything left, that is," he said with a sick smile as he prepared to undress himself. It was in that moment that Naruto had seen enough, and deactivated his cloak and jumped into the air, and threw two constructs on the ground. The first was what he called a senbone grenade. That became clear when it exploded, and instead of shrapnel that came from it was instead several senbone that either killed or disabled half of the Sinestro Corps that were in that circle. The other was just a smoke bomb. He wanted the rest for himself, and fell into the smoke. The next thing that the large Sinestro man knew was that half of his men were now dead, and the other half were covered in smoke. He made a mace construct, and was about to go in when he heard the fighting starting in the spot where the smoke grenade hit. Or rather a massacre. For that was what it was. From the green smoke he saw yellow energy blasts fire from the smoke, as well the clanging of weapons. But mostly it was just the screaming, and from what he could make out was a single figure wielding what looked like two swords moving and striking with precision, speed, and power that scared him so much that all he could do was stand there and watch, and the figure in the smoke picked them apart one by one. Sometimes he even saw him combining the two swords into a scythe, to cut them down, or a warhammer that hit them so hard, that they flew from the smoke into the wall, blood spilling on the pavement of it. After what felt like an eternity but was only a few minutes, the smoke finally cleared. All that was there were bodies of his men. Some were still alive on the ground but too hurt to get up. Others were just dead. And standing in the midst was a Green Lantern, clad in armored version of the uniform that he was not familiar with, and in a mask that covered his face with a green headband. What struck him, however, was the eyes. The green slitted eyes that scared him the most. Naruto then started walking towards him, and once again all he could do was stare. Then the idiot finally grew a pair, screamed and charged him with his mace on high, and swung it down on him. He easily dodged the attack and twisted around, jumped, and then hit him with a roundhouse kick that sent the big man spinning, showing him his back. From there Naruto sliced two shallow cuts to his legs that brought him to his knees. He then stuck the two ninjato into his legs straight through his shins into the ground below them. The big man screamed in pain and found himself immobilized and could not move as Naruto moved in front of him. He then looked at him now that he was at almost the same height level. The brute clenched his teeth in rage and still held onto his mace construct. He then tried to swing it at him, but without his legs he had no power in the attack. Naruto grabbed the mace and crushed it right hand. From there, faster than most could see, he punched the brute with lefts, rights, uppercuts, even elbows for what seemed like hours, smashing his fists against the monster that would lay his hands on someone who could not defend herself. When he was done, he took only a few breaths to collect himself. The brute's face was a broken mess. Nose broken, cuts and bruises as far as he could see, but he was still breathing. Naruto grabbed his chin to look at his swollen eyes. "What is your name?" Naruto ordered. "Mello," said the monster in a defeated tone. "You have power in your ring?" Naruto asked. All Mello could do was nod. "You're going to send a beacon to Sinestro. You will tell him and the rest of his bunch that Sector 2813 has a new Green Lantern. You're looking at him. If I see his symbol anywhere in this sector again, I will end him and his corps. Do you understand me?" Mello nodded in compliance. Naruto then let him go, calling off his sword constructs from Mello's legs. He was still kneeling when Naruto approached Tomi-Fi. The veteran lantern was still on the ground, but it managed to see the beatdown that he had given to her would-be rapist. Naruto kneeled before her with his hands held out in a placating manner. "It's alright. You're safe now. You're safe," he said. Suddenly the resolve she displayed disappeared, and whatever strength she had left, she used to move into his arms and wept onto his left shoulder. For relief or the trauma she suffered, he could not know. Perhaps it was both. From there Naruto used the ring to make a blanket to help cover her as he picked her up in his arms. Razor then came out of the courtyard with Tomi-Fi's battery. He looked to see the carnage that was before him, and the groaning of the people that were still alive, and could not believe that this rookie took them all out on his own. "What did you do with the guard?" Naruto asked. "Knocked him out." "Was that alright?" he said, wonder if Naruto expected him to kill the guard he was using. "That's fine. We should get back to OA," said Naruto, holding the now unconscious lantern in his arms. "She needs medical attention." Razor nodded and both left the Nauruan base. OA's medical facility. Anthet had been floating in front of the door that led to OA's medical facility, since Naruto and Razor had returned successfully with Tomi-Fi in hand. Razor volunteered to tell the Guardians about what happened while Naruto took her to the facility. To say the least, the Guardians had been overall glad that they managed to not only save one of their own, but sent a message. Although the body count was a bit of a surprise, and the fact that Naruto went up against several lanterns on his own was something that had been on their minds. However, Gantha wanted to see how the boy was holding up and find out about Tomi-Fi's condition personally. Soon enough he saw Naruto walk out with Sora Nadu escorting him out. Naruto had his mask off. "Thanks, doctor. You let me know if anything happens," he said. "I will. Good work in getting her back, Naruto," said Nadu. Naruto nodded in response and she went back inside. "Gantha," he acknowledged. "What did Nadu say on her condition?" the Guardian asked, getting to the mission part first. While physically she should make a full recovery. Mentally though that will take longer, said Naruto. She is a strong woman. She will get through this, said Ganthet. I know. But what they did to her. What they nearly did to her, Ganthet, said Naruto, stopping himself. You stopped that from happening. You prevented her from suffering even worse than she already had, said Ganthet. Neither said anything for a moment. Then Naruto spoke again. Am I getting a reprimand for my actions earlier? He asked with a chuckle. If you mean sneaking into the council chambers, the answer would be no, seeing, as you pointed out, they were going to call you anyway. But be wary, they do not like disobedience, said Ganthet. As for the lives you took, we are in the middle of a cold war, as John would put it with the Sinestro Corps. And unfortunately in war lives are lost. There is no denying it. I know that. I am a soldier. I fought my own war on my world. I know what it's like, said Naruto. But someone as young as you should not have to, said Ganthet. I'm pretty sure that thought was in the guys who fought the world wars on Earth, Ganthet. They still did anyway, said Naruto. Those instructions have paid off, I see, said Ganthet with a small smile which Naruto shared. In any event, I'm gonna go on patrol of my sector, he said. Naruto, you just went through a difficult first mission. You were allowed to rest, said Ganthet. Ganthet, I'm fine, said Naruto. Then suddenly Ganthet glared at him. They had themselves a staring contest for a few minutes before Naruto held his hands up in defeat. Alright, I'll call it a night. I'll do the patrol tomorrow, said Naruto. Good. Get something and get some sleep. And no sneaking out to Mogo for training. I know what you're like now, Ganthet ordered. Alright, I get it, said Naruto as he flew off towards the mess hall. Ganthet shook his head. I wonder if this is what it's like to have children, he said to himself with a small smile on his face. Hell of a first day, kid, said Kurama as Naruto flew the council chamber on the way to the mess hall. No kidding, said Naruto. He then spotted Razor off in the distance flying towards OA's atmosphere. Naruto then made a detour and caught up. Hey Razor, he yelled. Razor stopped to look at Naruto. Look, I wanted to say it was a pleasure to work with you. Hope we can do it again, he said, holding up his hand. Razor shook it and had a smile on his face. Same here. The next time could you let me pull more of my weight? You did most of the heavy lifting, he joked. Seriously though, if there is a fight to come, I would be honored to fight it with you. You are a fearless warrior, Naruto. Thanks, said Naruto, letting go of his hand. Now I have to go. I need my own rest, as I am sure you need it as well, said Razor, turning to leave. I hope you find her, said Naruto suddenly. Aya, I mean. I know there are still those who think she's evil, or whatnot, but from what I've also heard she seemed pretty special. Yes, she is, said Razor with a knowing smile on his face. Naruto's eyes widened and Razor left. You don't think? Thought Naruto to his partner. Maybe he did find her after all, said Kurama. Naruto shrugged and went back on course to the mess hall. Who knows? Thought Naruto. In any event, I think it's time to look at that second scroll tomorrow. And get started in learning the Fuinjutsu of my clan. He continued looking at his hand, remembering the lighting that came from the kunai as he flew towards the dining hall. Autumn. If O was the technological treasure trove of the universe, then Mogo was nature's answer to it. Plants, trees and life that rivaled even that Mogo himself. Flowing rivers and oceans. It was paradise and the perfect place to hopefully one day build the Blue Lantern Corps. Razor arrived in front of the beach home of his and smelled the fresh air. From his ring he could tell that Brother Saint Walker had not yet returned from his patrol of the corresponding sector. But that was not important now. What was important was the 5'7" green beauty that came out of the beach house. She was currently dressed in a white summer dress with short-length white hair that stopped close to her shoulders, who had curves in all the right places. Hello, my love, she said as she walked over to him and wrapped her arms around his neck as he wrapped his arms around her waist. Hello, Aya, he said before leaning down and giving her a passionate kiss, to which she returned with equally. You returned unharmed, she said after they broke apart. Yes, thanks to the new Green Lantern of Sector 2813, said Razor. New? What has happened? My databanks say Tomari is of that sector, but since I have been gone from the Guardians, I don't know what has changed. You didn't get any information from the Kolu after creating your technorganic body, he asked. She shook her head. This actually led him to smile. Then in that case, my love, let us go inside. I have a story to tell you. Of who might be the fiercest and most powerful Green Lantern I have ever seen, he said as he took her hand and they walked into the house. From there he told his tale to her. Orbit of Belter 4. The dropping of Melo's head was the sound that permeated over the empty throne room as the survivors of Naruto's assault stood. They were bandaged by constructs and had been given some medical attention, but were still in a lot of pain. Didn't help any that their leader was in a foul mood. There are many things that I tolerate in this corps. Murder? Yes. Torture? Yes. Instilling fear to people in order to preserve or create order? Absolutely. But I will not tolerate anyone doing anything such as rape on another sentient species. If you all have such desires, then I suggest that you go to a brothel to get it under control. Such a thing shows a lack of control and shows weakness to yourselves and to my core. Am I clear? Yelled Sinestro. Yes, sir, they cried in unison. Sinestro then made a gesture with his hand. Go. Prepare to destroy this facility. Leave no trace that we were here, he said. They did as they commanded and left the room. He then moved to sit on the throne and rubbed his face in frustration. A shame that we have lost a potential foothold here. We could still finish the construction of it, said the voice of Orochimaru as he walked in. The Sannin, garbed in his uniform, never looked or felt better since he acquired this new body. He hadn't felt like this since he left the village all those years ago. No? If the message that Mel left is true, then the new Green Lantern will make sure to check this sector to make sure we are not here anymore. We cannot afford that kind of attention, said Sinestro. What did your autopsy reveal on the bodies? From what I gathered, the wounds from the ones who got hit with the grenade were consistent from wounds I would see from Senbone. The rest appears to be made by a combination of cuts into the intestines and arteries to simple blunt force trauma, which suggests that the one who did this is highly proficient in close-range combat and able to adapt to a situation whether it be pre-planned or on the fly if need be. Orochimaru explained. And do you know of anyone who could possess those types of skills? Asked Sinestro. Orochimaru couldn't hide the smile on his face. Oh, I have a pretty good idea who might have done this. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.